Tumuli come in all sizes and shapes. Some are large, some are small, some have eroded so much that they can be very hard to spot. And from ground level where we usually stand, some are barely visible. This, by the way, is not a tumulus. But what exactly is a tumulus? Who built them? Why were they built and when? To uncover these answers, I'm meeting historian Marc Schoellen. My name is Thomas. This is Stones and Mounds. Let's get digging. So, to find out what exactly tumuli are, I'm meeting my friend Marc Schoellen. Hello, Marc.
Hello, Thomas.
Marc, what can you tell us about tumuli? What's a tumulus?
Well, it's a burial ground, and usually, the name derived from the Greek tumbos. We have it in English tomb or tumulus. It's all the same, or tumor, of course. It's the same sort of etymology, but we know that these are the barrows or mounds which were constructed over a tomb, and we find it in late prehistoric times, Neolithic to Bronze Age, and so on. So it's a common feature, and it's not only limited to Europe. We can find it even in Asia and in Africa. So it's not. It seems to be the archetypal kind of burial for more or less important people, individuals or groups.
So basically it's a big visible tomb for rich people.
Yes. Well, we suppose that they were rich people, but in some cases we can find burials which were used for hundreds of years. So it was a sort of community which constructed it, and it is necessary to have a community to construct such a place. And it doesn't even say anything about the social status of the individuals. We find, for instance, in England, they analyzed the bones they found there, and they could trace through genetic analysis the sort of relationships which were between the different members. And it's interesting to see that these were larger groups, tribes, families, which were reassembled after death and over several generations.
Okay. So it's also a bit like a cemetery then?
Yes, it's like a cemetery, but collective and visible from far. And I think that is an important part, is a feature which is visible in the landscape. We don't know exactly how they were fashioned. Were the plantations on top of them? Were they just isolated? Did they dominate the landscape? Well, apparently they did, because in some cases we know that they were very visible from afar. So we can suppose that they might have been places for worship of ancestors, for instance, or it could be something which could be like a delimitation of a land which is owned by some tribe or by the other tribe. So it could also be something which protects land. We don't know exactly.
So if I say that a tumulus is a poor man's pyramid, that would be wrong?
I think it would be wrong. There are loads of these monuments which have simply disappeared because they have been plowed over. I mean, that is the common way these tumuli have disappeared, because land use has been various over different ages. So some of them are only hardly visible, if at all, and they can be discovered simply by chance by some person making a ditch somewhere in a landscape. Yeah.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, a tumulus. Yep. So we have to check that.
Tumulus.
So it's a burial mound which is visible from afar, which is a heap of earth.
Yeah.
And it can have multiple inhabitants. No, that's the wrong word, because they are dead.
Yeah, it can have more than one individual being buried there.
And it can also have other functions than just being a tool.
For instance, Stonehenge is a very good example. We do know that this was something which was linked to, I mean, I wouldn't say cosmic speculation, but yes, they were looking into the sky and they were observing the sun, but at the same time, we get loads of burials which have been practiced all around this monument, which has been ignored for a long time. So it's interesting to keep in mind that these Woodton, which is close to Stonehenge, has got similar features. And even in Germany, you find in eastern Germany places like the Drehberg at Wörlitz, which is an important feature in this flat landscape close to the Elbe. And they found that these places were as well places of cosmic observation and burial grounds. So I suppose it was a sort of idea which is linked from the common existence of human beings on the earth to something which is perhaps a hope of rebirth. I have no idea.
Yeah, but Stonehenge, I did some research, and apparently in a 2-mile radius around Stonehenge, there are over 300 barrows.
Yeah.
Then you have Tumulus Saint-Michel in Carnac, which in Brittany, which I don't know, Carnac and Stonehenge, I think they're not really related, but they're similar.
No, but there's a big difference because you find the sort of dolmen structure.
Yes.
And the dolmen structure is in fact a sort of vaulted underground structure which has been uncovered by archaeologists, or not even archaeologists, but some people just took away all the earth, and we only find the stone structure.
Yes.
But they were used, for instance, as these sort of corridors where they put their dead inside. So we had a sort of dolmen in Luxembourg as well. It's close to Montenach, Großstein, and some legends formed around this sort of curious structure. Everybody knew that this was not a natural structure, but they didn't suppose that that was a burial ground. So in the 19th century, somebody just made an explosion there just to get the gold, which was never uncovered there because it wasn't a treasure hidden underside. But we know that these structures are quite common in lands occupied by the Celtic populations. So Celtic.
So Neolithic populations and Celtic
structures.
The dolmens are for Celts and tumuli are for Neolithic people.
But late Neolithic and later periods, because these tend to be used for hundreds of years. I mean, even Stonehenge has been now recently. They made discoveries from the Roman period, so it seems to have been a place which it attracted the attention of people in later ages, and we suppose they had different purposes, which we don't know exactly.
Okay.
There's one tumulus which was discovered in the late 1960s. At Altrier, Hersberg, called Schanz in Luxembourg. And that one was very visible. Apparently people already tried to excavate it in the 19th and early 20th century. So they were poking holes into that sort of mountain, that sort of barrow. And in 1968, a museum undertook an excavation, and they discovered very, very interesting items. They found for instance, a stumnos, which is a sort of recipient from the Etruscan shores somewhere from Italy. So it was clearly imported. There was a sort of fibula, which is sort of that sort of item decorated with coral, which is also something quite exotic. It comes from the Mediterranean. You found jewelry in gold and even some textiles, bits and pieces of textiles. So it's very interesting to see that that must have been an important mound, and it was also a place where they could trace exactly the way that one was constructed, because it had an inner chamber. And in the period of the 6th or 5th or 4th century before Christ, they used to bury dead people on sort of couch, sometimes made of bronze, but in this case they didn't discover such structure, or in a sort of chariot. So sometimes you discover those the wheels, for instance, or the metal bits and pieces of it. That certainly is an interesting discovery of the 1960s, pre-Roman. But what they call the Latène period, so it's a period in which we can trace contacts between the Mediterranean shores and this area, which was still considered to be very barbaric, but had refined ways of burying their dead.
Okay, so to sum up, we have Stonehenge, where they have tumuli. We have the big tumulus in Carnac, which is, I think, the biggest one in Europe. The Mont Saint-Michel in Carnac. We have a few here in Luxembourg, and then we also have tumuli from the Roman period here in Luxembourg. But they're not pyramids. They're not directly related to pyramids.
No, not really. But the one which is quite outstanding is the one which is close to the Helper Knap, which is in the middle of the country, close to Mersch. And that is called the tumulus of the Bill. Bill is just the
name of the meal.
Yes, well.
No.
Yes, well, it was a bad joke. I mean, it's the local name for this place. And I quite remember this place in the 1960s, since I'm born in 1963. I was 5 years old when it was, I was 7 years old when it was excavated. But this structure was excavated by the museum, and they discovered that it dated back to the Roman period. It's a bit unusual to find tumuli in our areas from the Roman times, but we have got the second one close to Flachsweiler. And that one was very well known since the 19th century. It had been described, and unfortunately, it was unprofessionally excavated. So all the interior stuff they discovered disappeared in the meantime. So it's just a sad reminder of what happens when people don't take care of their monuments. Yeah.
Or maybe it was tomb raiders, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
Speaking of different stories, let's take the helicopter and look at a few different monuments. Here we have the oldest Egyptian pyramid of them all. This one, that's the pyramid of Pharaoh Djoser, built 4,650 years ago, and you can see it's not totally smooth. It's the first one. It's the first try, and here in the background you see the biggest one, built 4,600 years ago.
The Great Sphinx. It is smaller than I expected.
Okay, cute. But to come back to the pyramid, it is the tallest one. It's 146.6 meters tall, 481 feet. The biggest tumulus is 10 meters tall, so quite a difference. And now we are going to France, northern France, here in Brittany. We are going to take a look at the biggest dolmen of the area, the cairn of Barnenay. It's not entirely certain if we can call it a tumulus or not, but it's very, very, very big. It's 70 meters long, so 230 feet long. And as you can see, it has already been dug out. It was never really covered in earth, so yeah. I think that's the definition of what a tumulus is supposed to be, a heap of earth on top of a tomb. And here in Barnenay we have a few tombs in the same monument, but apparently no earth heap. And from here we are going to southern Brittany. And we are staying in the prehistoric period. We are going to the tumulus Saint-Michel, which is the tallest one in Europe. But first, right next to the tumulus Saint-Michel, we have the prehistoric site of Karnak, which you probably all know. Karnak, which has which has a lot of standing stones, and we don't really know what they mean, who built them or why. But well, you can see here, right in front of the nose of the helicopter, we have the tumulus Saint-Michel with a chapel on top of it, right underneath us. So this is the tallest tumulus in Europe. And from here, 10 kilometers away, we go to Gavrinis in the Morbihan, the Little Sea. Gavrinis is not the biggest tumulus ever, it's not the tallest tumulus ever, but it's one of the oldest stone monuments ever. It's 6,874 years old. And apparently it was quite a rich tomb. One of the oldest ones we know of. And the view, of course, is breathtaking. So here we are above the inner sea, and right vanishing from the view we have the Atlantic Ocean, and we are going to the Netherlands, to Drenthe province, to see the biggest dolmen in the Netherlands. So here, coming into view, is the biggest dolmen in the Netherlands, D27. It is 22.6 meters long, 74 feet. And people call those things Hünengrab or Hunebed, which means tomb of the giant, because, well, a few hundred years ago, people didn't understand who built those things, why they were built, and how. So everyone thought it must have been giants. This one, like I said, D27 is worth the visit, well worth the visit. It's in Borga in the Hunebed Center. And it's really huge. A few millennia ago, of course, the stones were not visible. Everything here was covered in earth. And from here we are going a few kilometers to the west, to Havelte, to see the second largest dolmen in Drenthe province. Here you have a 2 meters tall YouTuber for comparison. This is the 52. Second largest dolmen. Sadly, there were a lot of people about, so I couldn't film it without having people running and screaming through the picture. So here you have a few pictures of the thing. And right next to the 52, we have the 53, which I was able to film without having screaming children in the picture. It's a lot smaller, but it's right next to its bigger cousin. That's it for today. If you liked the episode, feel free to share it and to subscribe to the channel. We are going to meet Marc again in the next episode, and we're going to take a look at a Roman tumulus. So if you're interested, I'll see you there.